What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining the Pod Ones podcast with the voices of Arda. We just watched episode 4 of season 2 of Rings of Power. I'm here with Pete Belmont and Tim at Bard of Arda. How are you guys doing today?
What's up, man?
Doing good.
Good. I enjoyed this episode. I'm excited to talk about it. I think there's a lot to talk about. Pete, I saw your video either from yesterday or today. Mm-hmm. You seemed like you had a couple of concerns.
I want to preface anything I say that this is like one of my favorite episodes. Right now, It's like the second one's my favorite. This is probably my second favorite. So if I sound critical, it's because I gotta at least, I can't be like high praise for everything because it's not high praise. Like you can't give high praise for everything.
Sure,
there are
totally.
things they haven't done well, or it's not that it's bad. It's just not what I expected. And that's opinion.
It's something that, like, based on our discussion earlier this week, there are the things that you brought up that I'm like, oh, I see where that's coming into play, but it is like not even registering to me. Like a lot of the stuff you talked about with languages, which we can get into, and just like it is way over my head. But it's cool to see the connections happening after I watch these episodes.
Goes over my own head when I read it. It's all right.
But you know what, Tim, how did you feel about the episode overall?
I'm sure people were expecting me to be excited for this one because of a couple appearances. I loved it.
We'll talk about it.
I have the show after 4 episodes is sitting strong at a 8 out of 10, and that's or 9 out of 10, excuse me, and that's just because I gave episode 3 an 8. The rest are all 10s for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. This was, I think, the first episode where I was like, oh, I know some of these characters. Like, these are characters that, like, necessarily aren't in Peter Jackson's trilogy, but are like in the zeitgeist of Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, oh, I know this. Or when something is brought up, I'm like, oh, I remember someone talking about this. So I'm starting to get these little droplets of nuance, and I don't want to call it fan service, but just like lore that it's a lot of fan service going on. But I would say droplets of lore that I'm starting to like hone in on and be like, ooh, I know that they're talking about something, and I kind of understand, not to the fullest extent, but there's stuff going on. But yeah, like I had a good time. I think the direction that a lot of the characters were getting to know better and better and better as the show goes on, we're starting to see that season 2 shift of who they were, last season is no longer who they are anymore. And it's very cool to see these things. I think even from this episode 3 to episode 4, certain characters' relationships are immediately changing, even within one episode, and I think that's really cool to see. But like you said, Pete, like not everything has to be praise. The one thing that I would say about this episode is like it's almost a positive, but also kind of a negative. Is we got 0 dwarves in this episode.
I agree.
And while I enjoy
no Numenor either,
yeah, I enjoy that we're spending more time with these characters because we have a huge ensemble, and it's cool to just say, hey, we're going to focus on the elves as they're going to Eregion, or we're going to focus on Pelagir, or is that how you say it?
Pelagir, yeah.
Pelagir, yeah. Like, we're going to focus on this, but then it's both a like, oh, I really wish we would have gotten the dwarves. A little bit more political intrigue as to how we left off at Numenor would be cool, but it also makes me excited for next week. So I'm like, well, they're definitely going to hopefully include it next week into the story and continue it.
I gotta be honest. The stores and the Harfoots and the strangers are like my favorite part of the show now. I love that shit. I like,
nice.
I love the songs. I love like them talking about the Suzat, which is like, they talk to I forget her name. Sorry with a G.
The Goon.
Make sure. What? the
The
matriarch, you know,
goon.
Yeah.
yeah, something
The
like that.
goon,
And
always gooning.
and she was, I really enjoyed her. She was like a no bullshit type character, but um I liked how they had the whole prophecy thing. I mean, obviously that's not how in the books, but the word Susa or Suzat means Shire or the Shire. It's a term that's used because a lot of people don't know this, but we have a translated work here, translated by Tolkien, is his own mythologies, that was translated from Westron, and Westron is based off this language called Andunaic, which is the tongue of men's before they go to Middle Earth. Or I shouldn't say Middle Earth, before they travel over the Blue Mountains, that it's spoken there, and then it's brought over to Beleriand and then brought over to Numenor, where it becomes like a secondary language because they mostly speak Elvish there for some time. So things change, which you're probably starting to see now in Numenor.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see such like a rich depth of thing, though it also feels a little out of place, but I enjoyed it. That's like definitely fan servicey. But I really enjoyed that part. I have comments about Elrond and Galadriel where we've had 4 episodes of this now of they're kind of at odds with each other. And I'm kind of curious, you know, why they're doing a couple things. Like I could start from the end and talk back, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts too. So
Yeah, like the mural to me was really cool. Like when they're with the stores and they see the mural and just seeing, like, I think the mural looked cool. And while I'm sure that there's some really awesome Easter eggs in there that I'm not aware of, I think just the moments that the Goond and Poppy have together when they're staring at that mural of just like, we never found it. Like we have just been wandering. We've been walking this whole time. And it's one of those things, like they're both, it feels like they're both coming to different conclusions, but having the same feeling. You know, Poppy is feeling like we were destined for something. We were supposed to find something. We weren't just supposed to be wandering for wandering's sake. And all the dreams she had in season 1, and this is what I do like about this season, especially with kind of how like the first season was received from a lot of people, is I think they're still sticking to the guns that, hey, we made season 1 and we're gonna continue that story, and we're gonna keep moving with the things we did in that story. But I think with her and the Goond like having that moment together, you know, they obviously immediately at odds with each other, and then kind of understanding the position that both of them are in. And I thought that was a great moment. But I mean, we can kind of go down I'm not going to say perfectly in order, but kind of like the main chunk of the story. I mean, we really do start, you brought up Elrond and Galadriel. We start with this Elvish party going to Eregion. They're leaving and they have at this point left, and they're traveling. And they're trying to get there. And yes, they are definitely at odds with each other. You can definitely indulge me as to if there is a reason why they shouldn't be so at odds with each other at this point, or if there's maybe more to the story as to why that's going on.
Oh, Timmy, you want to comment on it, or do you want me to?
Well, for the first part, with the scene, it's like this is what kicks off the episode. They're leaving, and something that stood out to me was just the name of the Oxa Bridge, which isn't a name that we get in Tolkien, although we can take root words out. And I tried to like look stuff up, and in my mind, all I'm thinking is it's like a callback to the Helker Oxa.
Yeah, I was literally just thinking of that word.
But Oxa isn't the root. It's Roxa, so it's something completely different. Whatever. I like to go on a tangent there. But with their relationship with Elrond and Galadriel, it's one of those things where this season, like having Elrond seem like they're trying to have him like stand up for himself more than be a dick to Galadriel. To no longer be just the herald, just the politician, to be that guy. And he's definitely coming off a little rude to Galadriel, but maybe she needs it. She needs a little bit of a check at this point. But as far as like a lore connection, it's really just maybe Elrond thinks he's the only one that isn't being corrupted.
Sure. because I liked Elrond so much in season 1, and I liked his character in season 1 so much, I am kind of in the middle, like, okay, I get it. You're frustrated. I know you want the best for the Elvish people, and no one seems to be listening to you. But can we get back to you being a really nice guy? I really like that.
I think he's still
Kind
a
of
nice
summer.
guy.
Yeah.
I think he's still a nice guy, but there's a bit of a. I don't know why they're trying to build this frustration in him with Galadriel, because if you listen, you've been watching the episode, it's been weeks, and probably months now since the events of the finale of season 1. And so the line that really bothered me the most was the last line he kind of says in the episode. But his focus on the ring is what's really driving it. And I know that his concerns are the aspect of Sauron's deception and his corruption. And she has shown herself in prior episodes to not be completely free of it. She's not. She still thinks about Halbrand in some kind of capacity of like a comrade, or that she understood his mind, but doesn't realize that it was just a ploy and to placate what she needed. And it's tough. It's a tough thing to really wrap your head around, because I want them to be like this White Council, this group that work together. But even in the text, it's stated that like Elrond and Gil-galad did not mess with that Anatar. They would have nothing to do with him. And Galadriel was actually the same way. But she wasn't in Lindon. She was near Lake Evendim, I think, at that time, and then goes to Eregion. So she's like there when this all occurs, and she leaves and goes to Khazad-dûm and so forth. And Celeborn stays in Eregion. That's how the story. Because Celeborn and Eregion, it's stated in the Fellowship, go over the Blue Mountains into Middle Earth before even one of the kingdoms, the Elven kingdoms, known as Nargothrond, one of her brother's kingdom, Finrod Felagund, he's king there, before that kingdom fell. So there's like a big gap there. So they have a lot of room with it, and I don't mind the dynamic. I just personally think it's like a negative for the show. They're really beating it with a stick. Like they're going so hard in the last 4 episodes to show this. When do we change? Like, you just were given Nenya the Ring of Wind, the Ring of Adamant. This is like not some. First off, I don't even want to talk about like what happens if an elf takes the ring off. Do like they go back to fading? I don't know, but like whatever. But like just takes the ring and then says that crazy line at the end. He's like, "Yeah, well, she just did that for the ring." I was like, she didn't say anything about that. She gave you the ring to protect it. I'm like, what are you saying, man?
We can definitely talk about that, because that was, even without that, because my assumption is that these are very powerful rings. They have a lot of influence on the person that is wearing them or that is even around them. And to me, it was like when she pulls off the ring, I was surprised. Like, I was surprised she pulled it off. And I was like, I understand that it's not the one ring, right? It's not Sauron's ring, where the one that Frodo and Bilbo deal with the most. And I'm like, so it doesn't have that type of power, but it clearly, there is something about
they're
these
incredibly
rings.
powerful. The 3 elven rings are said to be the most powerful of the 19. It's the reason why the one had to be so powerful. Tolkien even says in his own letters, he's like, that's why so much power and like of Sauron was poured into the ring. It was to overcome the 3 elven rings. They're so powerful. And it's cool that they kind of showed that, but I don't want to jump too far ahead of it, because I know we have like a bunch of other episodes to talk about.
A lot happened in this.
I just got so like, I just get into that moment. I apologize. But we were talking about the Axa Bridge. We were gonna maybe like we could take a look at like where they go next, because pretty big location.
The big thing that happened with the a lot of things happened. Well, a couple things happened with the elves, and a lot of things happened with all the characters that we're dealing with in this episode. But the Barrow Downs seemed like a very, very prominent part of the Elvish story, or the Elvish party, and this scene was I thought was really cool. I'm not familiar too well with the Barrow Downs, but it very much felt like the Fellowship of the Ring moments with the Nazgul and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool, because we didn't really get a lot of or any of that in season 1. There was no. I think the girl with the white eyes was the closest we got to these like dark specters, this very haunted aspect of Lord of the Rings. And now we're getting it again. And I thought this was a really cool sequence. I think it's very unfortunate that they just smacked some guy out like within 5 seconds of getting there. That felt, especially.
I don't want to get into the horror trope of it, because it's like,
I will, because especially with the reception of casting and stuff from the first season that is still going on social media with the second season, I was like, you did not have to do this. Like you had three and I'm just gonna say you have three nobodies as far as the general audience is concerned. You could have gotten rid of either of those, and you decided to go with the one person that aspect of social media could latch onto. And I was like, what a baffling decision.
I'd love to hear the reasoning. And then for the next scene to be like that matriarch getting slapped across the face, I'm just like, what is going on here right now with this episode that you need to emphasize this? And like, did you not have even a slight conversation about this and how like we were watching like, you know, last night, and we both reacted, all of us reacted, I'm sorry, to this being like, what was that about? You know,
it was, these feel like decisions that like, not that these scenes didn't need to happen, not that you didn't need to have stakes with the Elvish party and understand that, you know, like things can happen to the elves. And we've seen that happen in season 1 with the orcs and stuff like that, and what they do to the orcs what they do to the elves that they capture with Arondir. But it was like, again, I think it was a very strange choice. I think when that scene with the stores, I thought she got her throat cut. Like I thought she was like out, and I was like, like this seemed like a very important character that we were going to build on, and luckily she just got. You know, I'm not going to say luck. I shouldn't say luckily. The lesser of the things happened, which was a better choice, but still, it was like, does this need to happen? Could this not have been a magical spell? I don't know his character, but could something else have happened besides her getting hit across the face?
I am glad about this, because in Tolkien's world, the idea of magic isn't what you'd find like magic systems in Wheel of Time, for example, or anywhere else, or like how Jedi have the Force. Magic is an inherent like thing in Tolkien's world, where Galadriel in the Mirror of Galadriel chapter, where like they look into it, she says to Samwise, like, this must be what you consider magic, but this is just like normal to me. This is my life. Like, and some of it, like, I wish they would kind of start peeling back and allowing the elves to really delve into that. But like, I do like that there's lore, even though it's made up lore about the Barrow Wights, and like, you know, Elrond figured it out. I like their designs. The designs were wonderful. They're very like pre-Middlemen / Numenorian, so they have like kind of an Eastern feel, which checks out because Hildorian, where the men awoke, that's all the way in the east, so they would have traveled a long ways. And it's stated in the text that like the Dunedain, the Numenorians, when they come to Middle Earth finally after everything, they know of this location, Tir Gorthad, I think it means like the hill of Spirit of Dead, and it's like, you know, they have great reverence for it. I just wish it was bigger. I felt like I was looking at a miniature set of the Barrow Downs. I don't know, because like
I can see that.
it's so described as like this ominous place, and like, you know, there's these stone slabs and like tall, and like there's hills, and like, you know, what Tolkien based that off is an area in England where like it's very rolling hills. That's where downs were. That's how they looked. They were just mounds that had burials within it and then sealed off. And they just grew over it.
This very much felt like a cemetery, like just a cemetery you had passed by, and I'm like, I'm fine with that as like an aspect of like, hey, we actually stumbled into this like ancient burial ground, and you know, like something like, you know, 12 very important people were buried here, and I'm like, okay, I wasn't like pulled out of it, again, not knowing, you know,
it's still cool.
I think
like the necromancer idea of Sauron.
Yeah,
you know?
The way that they like almost unwound as they were kind of like coming out. I thought that was really, really cool. It looked great.
Awesome designs. Beautiful.
And I thought it was a great. I thought like I think if we look at it from like what was happening in the scene, like I think it was very cool. I think watching them go after them, and then they would just reform and reassemble. And then obviously Elrond figures it out that you have to use the weapons they were buried with. I thought that was cool. And correct me wrong, they left the elf that died. They left his sword there.
They buried him. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess is that an elven tradition, or is that they wanted to continue the tradition of the Downs? They just did it.
I don't know, Tim. You have any comment on that?
I mean,
Kill the slain.
I'm trying to think that. But if an elf died in the presence of companions, would they leave their weapon behind? I can't think of anything.
No, they make cairns usually, right? Like burial mounds.
Burial mounds. Yeah, and the doors would do stone cairns.
Yeah. Well, I'm the only why I think that. I think if Fingon's stone helm. No, not Fingon. Fingolfin's stone helm. I'm sorry. Near the Kira Thorondarath, over in like Gondolin.
The Kira Thorondarath,
yeah.
Oh yeah, for Glorfindel, yeah.
No, it's not Glorfindel. It's Turgon's dad. I'm pretty sure, because like either it's Turgon or Fingon, or I'm sorry, Fingolfin or Fingon that gets buried up there. It's not Glorfindel, because he falls. He's probably done. That's what I'm thinking of. Point being is that like point being is that like there's a lot of different options for burial in like Tolkien's world.
Maybe they're just worried that he's gonna rise from the dead as a baron. Like, we need to leave this here so that doesn't escape.
I was like, they're leaving the sword just in case he comes back and someone else can take his ghost out.
Have you ever seen The Northman, the movie that came out? The guy who did the Lighthouse and all those. They do a Draupnir in there, because that's what the basis of the Barrow-wights is. It's the Draupnir.
Well, that's all I think of when I see Draupnir. Yeah, those are Barrow-wights.
but that's something stated about the you have to defeat them with their own weapon or take their weapon away or something along those lines. So it like maybe they got the inspiration there for that. They took it more close to home. That
makes sense, because there's a lot of parallels there. I'm going through a game right now that deals heavily with that and like the Norse mythology. So like, yeah.
Oh, what game?
Hellblade 2.
Oh yeah, I heard good things about it.
I'm a big fan of the first one, and the second one's also really good. And yeah, you're dealing with Draugr constantly.
Nice.
But yeah, like I thought the scene was good. I thought it was fun. I think that one of the themes that they do really well is when the action sequences are happening, they really highlight the ability of the elves. And they also do it without diminishing the capability of like dwarves and men. Like, when you see someone like Isildur fighting, or you see someone like the captain fighting, or the villagers of the Southlands in season 1, they are doing well. Like, they are capable combatants. But then when an elf comes in, it's not like the other people are helpless. It's just that the elves are so much higher in their prowess. And I think it's like every time we see the elves, whether it's especially Arendir, and just how every time he goes into action, it's just such an amazing moment.
He's the best elf in the whole show.
Yes.
I'm actually starting to warm up to Gil Galad a little. I don't know. He's starting to feel like a little more like a king instead of like Peeper Gil Galad. Do you remember that scene from the first season where he's just like watching Durin and Elrond leave over after the table incident? Creepy, bro. Creepy.
Oh, yeah. I did love the table scene.
I loved it, but it was creepy. He's just up there like, I'm like, dude, like Ben Walker's probably like, God, this is weird.
He's got kingly things to do. What are you doing?
Watching people.
Like I thought it was a great scene. But kind of to move forward to the men that we're dealing with that are not Numenorians,
sorry, I was reading a comment about the Viking Barrows. Which one?
Pelargir? The Pelargirs. Yeah, and we have the wild men, and we have the woman that burned off her mark to infiltrate. And yeah, I liked that she was found out so quickly. I liked that Arendir was like, yeah, absolutely not. You are 100%, working with Adar. And I do enjoy the dynamic between her and Isildur, and how there's this constant like, I don't trust you, I trust you, I don't trust you, I trust you. Where it's he gives an inch and she takes it back, and then she gives an inch, and so I think that aspect is really cool. I think the way that it resolved itself in the end was kind of one of those things. It's like, it's not how you wanted it to end, but it makes sense how it ended. And I really like this, and it's crazy that Sauron has been dethroned as the hottest character in the show. It's now the Mudworm is the hottest character in the show.
I could get behind that. So, yeah, so the Mudworm, we're getting into this whole thing. Isildur and Arondir is like my dream team up. I love it. I really don't know how I like feel about the switch of like Arondir losing Bronwyn, and now we have Isildur and Estrid, and now Arondir's on like kind of a back burner. I don't know how I feel about it, but I love the character dynamic. They work well. What I did notice about the giant worm thing, this nameless thing, it tied heavily into actually a statement from the Silmarillion. We talk about a beast of horn and bone, of ivory and bone.
Oh, yeah.
And like if you looked at its
teeth
teeth
sticking out,
and it had claws, it was
Yeah.
like it was exactly a callback to this, which was like, so the first Dark Lord, really influenced the creation of the world. He was there, and that's why they refer to it as Morgoth's ring. There's Sauron's ring. Well, Morgoth's ring was the world. It's what he craved the most, and it's what he poured himself mostly into. So that's why we have like hot volcanoes, freezing things. The extreme temperatures all come from the first Dark Lord. But he also is stated to have like manipulated certain things where like he couldn't create, but he could like, kind of mock. And it's stated that like under his like darkness, that like these beasts would grow, like they grew horns and like in ivory and like like tusks, and they drew blood, and like they became more violent. So it's like a cool callback to that, as well as the statement of nameless things from like the when Gandalf falls with the Balrog. They state that when the White Rider chapter of Two Towers, when he like tells them about that place. Or is it? It's probably also during the Watcher. I think it's the Watcher as well. Whatever, it's both chapters. But anyways, it's cool to see that stuff. Though I just am like, they got sucked down there. Were they like eaten? Did he cut himself out?
Oh, they were totally eaten. They
got eaten, right?
Yeah, because
because
I can't remember her name. The wild one. Estrid. She puts the stick in, and that pulls the worm out, and then I believe that's Arondir's sword cuts through the worm, and then they get out. And I did love like it's like, what do we call it? We'll call this supper. Like, I love that. That was great.
I got a little grossed out. That was covered in mud, and it was like nasty, nameless thing. You don't know what that thing's been eating.
I was thinking like this could poison you, but you got to do what you got to do.
You don't even care. Well, elves don't worry about that. Elves don't deal like they don't worry about like the things men worry about. An upset tummy. Elves probably don't get really that bothered by it. But a man, who knows, dude? Who knows?
But I like that scene. I like the design of the worm was really cool. I thought it was great.
And it was their art director is John Howe, who's like a really famous Tolkien artist. Like he's super well known. There's him, Alan Lee, and Ted Naismith are the three top ones. My personal favorite is Donato Giancarlo. Fantastic. Giancarlo. I'm sorry, I said his name wrong. Rude. But yeah, so the designs are all really cool. Like all the ring designs, the creature designs are all coming from John Howe, who really influenced Peter Jackson's movies as well. That's why they look familiar at times. People don't really think about that.
The Balrog design, that's straight John Howe.
Yeah, that's John Howe's Balrog design. And like a lot of the armors, the rings, they're all designed by him. Like if you look at the behind the scenes, he like does it, he sketches it out, and then they bring it to life. And so like even with the orcs and those like designs, there's like real designs. They're not just fully CGI. They like actually build a lot of this out. They put a lot of work into this second season. Not that they did in the first season, but this second season they really like took everyone's feedback for it. But this whole dynamic between the three of them, where my dude Arondir is creeping on people, like he's heavy creeping. I love Arondir, but they making him heavy creep on people. He's like, I saw that scar. He like, she throws a pot at him. He straight kicks it. He kicked the pot. He could have punched it.
Or is he just insanely observant?
He's insanely observant.
He's just a protective dad. He's like, Isildur's here. He does not have his dad. Theo's here. He doesn't have a dad. I also
think that he's more vigilant because of what happened to Bronwyn. I think he's way more vigilant because of what happened to her. Because, like I said the last time we spoke, that's a huge callback to like, Erethdel and like what happens to her in Gondolin, where she's poisoned by a javelin but doesn't realize it, and Celebrian, the daughter of Galadriel, and how she gets poisoned by an orc arrow and it never truly heals, and she has to go to like the Undying Lands to find any peace. So it's like there's huge callbacks, and now he's left in this place where it's like he's lost this person he loves, and he's trying to like do what she would have wanted him to do, is protect Theo, but it's been difficult. And that's actually, a lot of people don't like Theo. I'm not the biggest fan of Theo, but I like that dynamic where like they developed
He realizes that Theo's not a bad person. Like Theo realizes
I definitely
that
wanted to talk about Theo and Arondir because of that interaction, and it's just one of those things. It's these really quick lines that mean so much, and I agree. Like Arondir and Isildur are awesome together. It's and that kind of goes back to what I was saying is like when we see the capability of men and then the excellence of elves, I think it's a really cool dynamic. And it's just one of those things. I think when we see that when the sword is stolen from Isildur, and you just hear the bow creak, and it's just like he's ready. He's like, you are not gonna get away with this the way you think you are. I'm gonna put you in your place. Yeah, and it's just like I'm not gonna shoot you until I need to. And I thought that was great, but that I think leads into the other big thing that happened, which was the really big thing was the Ents showing up, and I loved the way I think it was Winterbloom was her name.
Yeah,
just
Winterbloom was one of them.
how the leaves really
I didn't catch the other
as,
one.
Yeah, the leaves acted as like flowing hair and stuff like that, and I loved. The one thing I really like about both seasons is just the way that people talk in this show. And it's like, I think there's a way you can go overboard with dialogue and having it sound so fantastical. And I think this has this perfect blend of this is believable. This is how, like, this is just a very fancy way of talking. And I think the way that the Ents talked to Arondir, and Isildur was awesome. I thought the scene just with Arondir talking to Winterbloom and her putting the leaf on him, that was like a really moving scene for me, especially the callback to season 1 when we had to cut the tree down. And he says, and he doesn't lie about it. He says yeah, it's a great pains I have. And I want your forgiveness for that. And like, I thought, that was definitely, I think my favorite moment of this episode was the Ents and just the dialogue between them.
The forgiveness takes an age and washes away the soil, and like all those lines are awesome. I loved them. Though someone pointed out that Arondir is like wearing wooden armor and it's like super uncomfortable.
I noticed that too. I noticed. I was like, are they going to talk about that?
No need. But like giving him the flower and him just talking the way he does, there's such reverence for the trees and love for them, and it shows like this Sylvan side of him, because now he said he was from the Greenwood, but then he had also said he was born in Beleriand, didn't he? In like the 3rd episode, I gotta rewatch it now because now we have some like a bit of an
There's
issue.
So many callbacks from the first season. I'm like, I really gotta watch.
I know, and I'm just like, dude, is he like a Sylvan? I like to think he's a Sindarin elf who traveled after the War of Wrath and now lives in the Greenwood, and it's a callback to Thranduil, the father of Legolas, because Thranduil was there in the first age. He was in Doriath. He traveled over with his father, Orifer, who's the king until something happens, and then he becomes king. Who knows? I don't know that story. But yeah, it's super interesting to hear that, where it's like, I don't know, like they're really giving us this rich lore with Arondir, and I just wish there was more of it. I wish there was more Arondir. I want Arondir, and I can't wait for him to, like, because we've seen the scenes in the trailer, to be in a Region. I want to see my man like get it in, because
I mean,
he's badass.
We are at the halfway point of the season, which is crazy. Like it just started and we're already halfway through. And I want more of Arondir. Like, he is such an interesting character. I think in a lot of ways, he's relatable. Even though he's like this type of person that really is hard to relate to, a person that has lived for hundreds and hundreds of years and gone through so many things. This was a great comment of he has to deal with grief, which is not what he's used to. And I think that's an interesting aspect of his character now. I think he's learning to care a lot more outside of just Bronwyn, which is very much in season 1 is what it felt like, is he really only cared about Bronwyn, and there was even some disdain for the elves he was stationed with in the Southlands. And now he's learning that like every single person in this village is valuable. And I think the last lines with Theo, were so good. He's like, I have a promise to keep, and you're welcome to come with me because I promised I would keep you safe. And Theo, understanding that what he said, episode 2 or 3, I can't remember. 3, and it was just this like, I also have I would come with you, but I also have a promise to keep. And it's like, it's while he
Go to Polar Gear.
Yeah,
He's gonna be the Witch King.
he's got the thing.
Dude, I was talking to Tim about this like offline, and we were like, this guy probably, the reason why he met his father's probably like some kind of Numenorian descent. Like I really feel like he's gonna end up being the Witch King. There's just so much focus on him. Then there was like the blade, it's kind of a Morgul blade that Tim was saying.
Do you think that has to deal with, because like Bronwyn was essentially the only person wearing color, and that may be because it's main character syndrome, but do you think that has anything to do with it?
I don't know. I can't wait. They said at San Diego Comic-Con you'll learn more about his background eventually, so I can't wait. I don't know if it'll be this season, but I like their whole thing. I don't know how I felt about Leather Cap man with the rag on his head dude who like showed up, and Hagen, I think his name was like, the whole Estrid and Isildur thing felt odd, and I'm gonna wait for it to really play out. I'd rather us talk about like Tom Bombadil.
We could talk about Mr. Tom Bombadil, because we've definitely talked about Nori and Poppy. We've talked about pretty much everyone else except for the end. Thomas of Bombadilian, if that's his real name.
It is Eowyn Benadar.
Tim,
Eowyn
who
Benadar.
on Instagram is Tim Bombadil. I want to ask you,
Uncle
because
Tom.
you look very, very familiar. How did you know it was coming this episode, especially with the title? And how, when you saw him, when you kind of figured out it was him, how did you feel?
So I saw the there was a Nerdist article that came out the day before on Wednesday, and I only found it because somebody had made like a Twitter post that was like, I saw the new Tom Bombadil clip, and of course I'm trying to figure.
I saw it
And
too.
it was the scene of the stranger being caught in Old Man Ironwood. And I was like,
name.
oh, here it comes. And I was kind of dreading Tom appearing on the show in the flesh, but at the same time, I wanted it so bad. And I have no complaints. And like when I felt him coming in the show, like I thought that was going to be his opening scene. Like he just comes and saves the stranger. But we had that little scene before where the stranger follows the goats to Tom, and he's just singing in his garden, having a grand old time, talking
When I
in
heard
riddles.
singing, and I was like, that's him. That's
There he
that
is.
guy.
So I was sitting with my girlfriend watching it, and I'm bouncing up and down. It's coming, Tom's coming. And
I had that
he
moment of
truly
like, I was with my girlfriend, we were watching, and I was like, is that motherfucker here? I loved it. I had a blast, like talking to people about Tom Bombadil, reading Fellowship of the Ring. I was like, I like Tom Bombadil, and I was like, not knowing who he was when I watched the Peter Jackson trilogy, and then reading Fellowship, I was like, that's crazy they didn't include him. He's great.
Mm-hmm. They don't include Tom in any adaptations, like unless you're playing
I watched because I watched
Game
the
Boy
cartoons.
Lord of the Rings games. You're not getting Tom.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, he is in that. That's crazy.
Yep.
The Diablo
Where's
style
Tom?
Lord of the Rings games, those were great.
Tom, I was worried that he was going to be a little too like all over the place because it's like hard to do that. I liked it because a bit of a precursor to Tom we know, but still giving us that Tom we love, and really demonstrating this whole like mysteriousness about him, where like a lot of people forget that Tom is kind of serious at times in the book, talking in riddles, but he speaks of like far things and talks about, he conjures images and like thoughts and people, and like the hobbits have crazy dreams. They like all sorts of weird shit happens at Tom Bombadil's house. Like, I don't know what's up with that joint. He's bugged out, man. And he's like always just like in his chair telling them stories. He wants to hear stories. The ring has no impact on him. And it felt like that. We're like the scene where he's in the tub and like you hear Goldberry singing, which I don't know what the hell's going on there. I'm gonna let him play it out. But he's just like, you're here. You're like, he's like, he's confused himself. He's like, what do you mean? Like, you were obviously just singing. He was like, don't be shy, Goldberry. And like, now he's like, a woman? You're crazy, dude. Like,
I like he was such a fun part of this episode. And I think you're right. I think the way that he wasn't this goofy aspect that I think you could easily turn him into, and the way he talked about the Dark Wizard in Rune, and it's just like, it wasn't that he was sad about it. The way he talked about, like, I've always been here, and I'm the eldest, and just how he was able to guide the stranger, and have the stranger understand. I thought it was cool. I thought it was really entertaining, and I thought, like, I just had a great time watching it. It was a blast.
Yeah, Tom, watching the trailers leading up to the episode, even since like the second trailer for the series dropped at Comic-Con, I was a little worried because they had him like, are you gonna sit here and let the world burn? And I was like, is he gonna be like really serious? Because, like, of course, there are moments, like Pete was saying, during in the House of Tom Bombadil, where he's really going into the lore of the First Age and before, and getting into the Dark Lord. So it's not completely foreign that Tom could be serious, but I thought he was going to really become a serious player in this. And they have the conversation all the way up to the point where the stranger's like, are you going to help me? And he's like, I'm a wanderer, not a warrior. And great deeds are to be left in the hands of those that are given them. It's like, oh, there's Tom. Saved it right for me. I'm not worried about anything because he's going to let the stranger go, and he's going to gather water lilies while they still grow. And that, my friends, is Tom Bombadil.
That is Tom Bombadil. He says stuff like that in the book. He's like, he's like, Tom, come with the, no, dude. We can't give the ring to Tom. He'd lose it. Like, forget about it.
There's something that you might not get from reading Lord of the Rings, mainly because besides all the speculation we have, Tolkien was asked about Tom a lot because he did publish a book about Tom Bombadil during his lifetime. And the closest explanation he ever gave to what Tom is he's the representation of like a rural farmer or like a hermitage kind of person who
lost rural area of he says a certain area.
Yeah, like he gives a specific town. I don't remember.
It's like either Birmingham,
a lot of letters
or
in there.
Oxfordshire, or something.
Yes. And it's the fact that without the people doing good things in the world, Tom couldn't exist. But without Tom existing and just being himself, what good is there in this world? It's that little bit of peace that everyone's fighting for, like Samwise says in Two Towers. Tom is the perfect representation of it. Even with his immense powers and magic and capabilities, Tom just is, and that's his job in this world, and to be that.
Like, you drive that's an awesome point, because if the Dark Lord wins, even if with everything, Tom dissipates. There no longer exists this aspect of this world.
He would be the last, like he was the first.
Exactly. It's crazy, man. And I really hope they play on this character a lot more. I hope he guides the wizard a little bit, and then we get the conversation aspect at the end of Return of the King, where Gandalf has to go talk to him for like an age. It's like he's there. He talks to him for like 2 weeks or something crazy, and like who knows what they spoke about. Like, good to see you again, Tom. It's been like 6,000 years, 3,000 years, some shit. Dude, that was wild. Remember you started breathing, a fire came out of the fireplace? Man, that was crazy. Good times.
Yeah, it was a cool part, and it's one of those things that I'm not against fan service, and I think this is a really good way to do it. It's like, this is very clearly a fan favorite character, even people like me who are not very deep in Tolkien lore know
It's a
who
big
he
challenge,
is.
though. You know?
Yeah, and I really think they knocked it out of the park. I think like my girlfriend, who very much has not even finished the Peter Jackson trilogy, she loved him. She was like, I like that guy. That guy's great. And so yeah, I think they really nailed it, and I had a great time watching it. And that kind of just leaves us, with the last bit that we did talk about with the Elvish party still heading to Eregion. Elrond has the ring, and Galadriel has been captured by Adar.
So people are super excited about this scene because of the way the pronunciation is being used for Quenya and Adar, who captures and says this line, "A star shines upon our meeting," which is like a big thing that's mentioned by like Noldorian elves.
It's the line. It's the line.
It's the line. Like, yeah, like it's the line you say to people, and it's like, Gildor and Glorion says to Frodo and Sam, Galadriel says it, like Elrond says it, like everyone says it. It's like that line, like we're blessed here to meet again, or meet for the first time. So for him to say it, the first episode, he pretty much confirmed that he was by the Sirion River in Beleriand. That's in the first age. Talks about the sage blossoms next to this great river. That's the river he's referring to. Whatever. We all thought he was one of the first elves that journeyed across, did the whole journey from Lake Vivienne, and that's where they awoke, because everyone just awakes and they're here in Middle Earth.
Oh, are those stars?
Where the hell am I? And the whole thing is that like you have these elves, they weren't speaking. They were probably speaking more Proto-Sindarian, if anything, or some kind of capacity, or Proto-Quenya language. Nothing comparing to it, because Quenya is a language that's developed in Valinor. It's just 3 different dialects. There's the Vanyar dialect, the Valinorian dialect, and the Exiles dialect, which is the Noldorian dialect, which is banned in the first age because of some other shit that goes down. Whatever. So it's weird that this guy would be speaking Quenya in the first place, but not only a specific type of Quenya, being the Noldorian Quenya, like an older style of Quenya, not even like the main version where he's talking with this sound instead of an S sound, because they didn't have the S sound in the original language. That's why everyone's been talking about the shibboleth of Feanor. It's this portion of the histories that they pretty much reference by doing that. But the lore implications are like, who the fuck is this guy? Like,
yeah. I mean, when I first heard that line, I was just like, "Oh, he said the line." I wasn't thinking, "Oh, he said Elentila." It should be Elencila. But I don't know.
I thought the same thing. I was like, "Ooh, that's so cool."
Because you can correct me, Adar is a new character for Rings of Power.
Yes, yeah. Adar meaning father.
Yeah.
So
this
like
is
he could have existed, but we don't ever see him.
Yeah, like I think him and Arondir, any new character you could really go anywhere with. And it could be that he just lied. That's one of those things.
He said he was one of the first 13, and like he chilled with Sauron in his fair form, and he like gave him drink, dark and red, and like all this stuff. So it's possible he just learned the language. That
was my initial thought.
Yeah, like the Finrod Felagund, Galadriel's brother, is actually the first one to discover men in the Silmarillion. And he's just like, they're asleep, and he shows up and he starts playing a rude harp, it's referred to as. He's just singing, and he just understands them, because I don't know if you know this, but certain characters in the books have a Sanwe, telepathy, and if you like your mind's powerful enough, you could do this stuff. But he like pretty much teaches himself the language of men and starts talking to them. He's like, "Hey, what's up, dude? Like, come play with me," and I'm playing my music. But yeah, so it's like it's not out of the realm for them just to have learned a new language.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like it could never get explained type deal, or they could go into it, and I think either is fine. But that being said, like talking about the lore as we kind of wrap up here, like it seems like we've talked a lot about a lot of the lore that has been introduced, just not only the past 3 episodes but this episode, but were there any standout things that we haven't really talked about, of like these little Easter eggs or just little things that showed up? Like were there any characters or objects or anything like that just really, really stuck out?
Before I start talking about ones that I caught when I was watching it, I didn't think about this, and we said the names several times on this. I saw it on Fellowship of Fans, posted a little thread thing, and it was the name the Goond. Now, where do we hear that that root word in?
Gundabad.
Also,
Or Goon.
Gund. So we have our store hobbits who dig into the rocks, right? And we talked about our friend Finrod, Felagund, the dweller of the delver of caves. So we have that root word is going right back to Galadriel's brother, Felagund.
Damn,
and I didn't think about it watching. I didn't think about it after the fact. It's right there, black and white. I love it. And they're digging holes in the ground like amazing. Little petty dwarfs.
Delving into the new
Lukizdeen.
Yeah, man. That's great. I didn't even think about that. I do love that aspect. They do that a lot with like the series, and I love that. I love the callbacks. I'm just like Gaia and the fortress. Karas Gaia is a callback to Dread or sea, either like Belagar. Belagar is the sea all the way to the west. Gaia, you know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
but lore contradictions.
Were there any lore contradictions? Were there any things that were like out of the stuff that you had kind of mentioned?
A lot of people are going to say the Barrow Downs are not canon, but there's Tir Gorthad is a location, like I said at the start of this. So
why would
like
they not be? Are they just not referenced, or is it like a letter?
Well, they're not evil places, but the whole thing is that the Witch King of Angmar, the head of the Nazgul, Ringwraith, who's taught sorcery by probably Sauron, who is the necromancer, who's put spirits into different beings, probably poured like some kind of evil malice into there and attracted evil spirits, and that's kind of how the Barrow Downs happened in the book. Like it is the Witch King of Angmar actively doing this and trying to stop like
like it was always a burial ground from like the first age on.
Before, like,
but the princes of Cardolan were buried there. It was never inhabited with these kind of whites.
Exactly. So that was fine. The only other thing is that, like, you know, the stores I don't believe actually did. They're called Similes, the Similes. They're the hole. They're the holes that we see hobbits live in. That's the term for them. I believe it's the Harfoots actually. So I'm very interested why they like kind of switched that, because stores are known for being river folk. That's why you hear about Gollum and like all this stuff. Gollum's a river folk. It's one of the stores. And it's also said that the people like, you know, Mary Brandybuck.
Well, Tom says that he saw this place that once was green and now is dirt. So is this something that they were river folk, and then as the Dark Wizard came through and that killed all of the crops and stuff like that, so that's when they started digging holes? Like, could they be living in the old riverbed?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
possibly, but it also feels weird that they would have been searching for the Suzat and then being here. So like, I don't think the stores were there yet in that area when it was green. Just it would feel weird otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, we got 4 more episodes.
Yeah,
I know.
So
and I know EJ just said Barrow White shouldn't be there, but that was the point we're making. It's fully capable of them being there. It's like it's not something.
Tir Gorthad was there. There were bodies there. Probably the people who didn't cross with Beor and the folk of Marek and Haleth. They would have settled right there, east of the Blue Mountains, which is right smack near the Old Forest and the Barrow Downs.
So they got us with that one. They got us.
Well, I personally, I had a great time with this episode. I think there were moments of this episode where even I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." Especially what we talked about, the ring. You know, I thought it was really impressive that Galadriel gave up her ring and handed it to Elrond, but then Elrond's kind of having this. She's doing it to save the ring, and I'm like, no, she doesn't want the ring to go back into the hands of the orcs and Adar. That makes perfect sense. Like, I don't see why you'd be upset over that or have that reaction. And that was like the one thing where I was like, I also felt like the wild men kind of like they got captured by trees and now they're nice-ish.
We're not so wild after all.
Yeah, that felt very like we haven't written anything for this. Let's just throw it in. Like but also
Hagen, my man, your lady's being stolen by the Numenorian.
Yeah, a semi insignificant part of the story. So it's kind of like, that to me, those were two like weak parts. But overall, I think with Tom and the Ents, I think the Barrow Downs were cool. I think watching Galadriel fight all of those orcs at the very end, awesome.
That was awesome.
It was dope. It was
so perfect as Galadriel.
Just like throwing the lantern up, and then
she heals that. She heals Canmere too.
Yeah.
She's
okay. Is she healing him, or is the ring healing him?
A little both.
A little both. Okay.
Yeah, the ring wouldn't really. If it was just like a normal dude using it, it wouldn't be able to heal. You got to think that the inherent elvish healing that Galadriel would have had, also what she would have learned in Doriath with Melian and the folk of there. Menegroth.
That's one of the Yvonne and Nildi right there. One of the few queens of the world who know how to make Lembas. Only 3 people know how to make Lembas in Middle-earth Legendarium, and that's not explained to you. That's why when it's like given to Frodo and the gang, it's like that's why the elves are like, "Oh, whoa, you got Lembas? That's wild!" Like that's crazy.
I was like, "Yeah, dude, here's some fucking bread on your way, dude. See you later." It's like, couldn't give me like fish or something. But no. This is what I really like about coming on and talking to people like you guys, because it's like there's so many things that like I know are parts of this world, but I don't know the ins and outs of this. So it's always cool to talk to people because I'm loving Rings of Power. I'm having a great.
I'm happy to hear that. I really am. Because that's what these shows should do, and that's what like it should make you ask questions and be like, "Yo, I'm digging this. Maybe there's more I want to learn about this."
Yeah,
I had a friend from high school message me today on Instagram asking about it.
Like crazy.
Yeah, it's wild because I'm just like, yeah, they could either be throwing syllables together or that's someone's actual name, and I don't know. I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I want to thank both of you guys for being on here and sharing your knowledge and
real quick
about the show. Yeah,
real quick. Can I drop one lore something that was good? That I really enjoyed and loved about this show. This episode specifically, we talked about the Ent and the Ent wife. The characterization of both of these characters, it might not seem like that much on the surface, but knowing their story and the history of the Ents, the fact that the Ent is more aloof and kind of like talking, in like poetry in this, and the Ent wife is like in your face. I got things to do. You're gonna stop doing this. More proactive. Where if we know the history of the Ents, we know that that's very much the way that the two different Ent versus Ent wife act is that the Ents were totally fine hanging out in the forest and tending to the trees and living in nature and becoming slow, whereas the Ent wives traveled out of these dark places, and hopefully the story will be told during Rings of Power, so I will not spoil anything of what the Ent wives do and how they act.
Okay. Before we depart, something that's always confused me: are all trees okay? All Ents are trees. Are all trees Ents? No. Okay, it is a special type of tree that is sentient.
Kind of, yeah. Because there's the horns,
Yeah,
and they're like kind of trees that have been brought to life. There is like a procedure here where like trees come to life, but like the tree Ents, the tree herders were
so
like
when we're outdoors and we see a tree in Lord of the Rings, it's safe to assume it's just a tree.
No, there's probably
think about old Ironwood in the episode.
Yeah,
he came to life and grabbed the stranger. That would be
Old
a tree
Willow,
that's becoming Entish versus an Ent that's becoming treeish.
So like trees can become Ents, but like and Ents can become trees. Some Ents get like slow and they turn back into a tree practically, and they like. Then there's the Huorns who are like trees that are alive, that become alive, that are like very active. They're able to like somewhat move. It seems it's like a moving forest. It's described as. So yeah, I guess I don't want to say like Ents are special beings, but like not every tree I feel like can just become an Ent out of nowhere.
Okay.
No, it was very specific that they were put into this world to be a creature, a living creature that is there to protect the forest. Mainly from those who like to chop wood,
like doors,
or that one of those wild men that as soon as I saw him in episode 3 at the end, I was like, You shouldn't be chopping.
Really
wood,
bad
homie.
at chopping wood, though. I want to point that out.
Don't be doing that out here. Be careful where.
Yeah.
What does Galadriel say? Careful which tree you lay your axe. To Gimli.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, like I said, and that's great because I think the Ents are super cool, but that's always been like, what percentage of trees are Ents? All of them? Some of them? But yeah, that's good to know. But that being said, I'm glad you guys are enjoying it, and I'm glad you guys are here to talk about it with me. And we'll have, I'm sure, other guests on talking about this as the season progresses. Got 4 more episodes, right? So we're halfway done.
More.
Four.
And then probably another 2 years.
Yeah, right. Maybe a little short.
But it seems like having the 2 years paid off. It really does.
Truly, yeah.
It really thinks I don't want to say they went back to the drawing board, but they were really able to maybe take what they were planning on doing, change a couple things, because I do think that season 2 is, as someone who really enjoyed season 1, I think season 2 is an improvement over season 1. Like, it's very obvious. Pete, you and I talked about it, of just like even just the actors feeling more natural with these characters is great to see. But I'm glad I'm glad you guys are enjoying it, and I want to thank you again for being here. Tim, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me under this title that's on the screen at Bard of Arda on most platforms other than YouTube, which I am a part of the Voices of Arda podcast channel, where you can find people like Nubeta and Callie, of course, but Belmont and a lot of great Tolkien content creators. We're working together, putting out lots of good stuff for you, and hopefully more coming soon.
Amazing. Pete, where can we find you?
BE1 Mont _ LOTR. I don't know why I said. I want to say Lotra. I don't know why. But like, anyways,
I do the same.
Lotra. I'm trying to spell it out. But you can find me
Loader.
at Belmont. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, even on Twitter and Threads. But I'm part of the YouTube Voices of Arda. That's why we're here. We are here to represent Voices of Arda, a fantastic podcast that Knew Better, Do Better, and Callie Cosplay, 2 wonderful human beings who actually pretty much got me doing this. Like, if it wasn't for them, I'd probably be not even involved in anything to do with this. I'm probably just another person talking about the show on the internet, but much love to them. We're trying to really do this community thing, so you can see Tim and I doing jokes. You can see us talking about lore. You can see Tim. He's a fantastic musician. He does a lot of parodies. You have to check it out. He's like, I saw that. You're like, but yeah, Tim's fantastic. Please listen to his stuff. It's so good. And I can't wait to talk more. Can't wait to talk more about Rings of Power as we have 4 more episodes.
Amazing. Well, you can find me at Forward to the Black, mostly on TikTok. I just made a Threads account. I don't know how I'm going to deal with that.
It's fun.
But,
Threads is fun. I like it.
It's fun.
Threads seems like not terrible Twitter.
Like Facebook back in high school.
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, hey, I tagged you.
You can always find me here on the Pod Ones podcast. You'll see me tomorrow night talking about Star Wars Outlaws with Element 7 and Harris Productions, as we kind of go into like a group review of that. And then I'll be doing horror films leading up to Halloween with Grandmaster Bale. And I think Pete and I talked about doing some Netflix Castlevania watch-alongs. So Tim, if you want to watch Castlevania, I think we're going to be doing that.
Have fun, y'all.
That being said, that'll do it for this week's episode, and we will see you guys again next week to talk about episode 5.
Happy night.
Thanks, man.
Bye. Namarie.